Real Predhead, and today I will be reading Generosity Start. Well, no, wait, I got the title wrong. Immortality starts with generosity. If you're new here, the basic premise is that a young man was infested with the soul from another world by the name of Chen Haoran. However, Chen Haoran was actually a terrible person, so no one's really upset about it. Also, he hasn't told anyone, except his wife, who is a wife from a sham marriage, which was intended to sully her for reasons. Family political family politics reasons. How about a recap of where we were last week? Let's see. Time for a high-speed doodle, I think. And go. Alright then. I'm sure you all enjoyed watching me write that. So, to recap, Chen Howren has a special ability that is really long and I can't remember the name of ever because it's like 6 words that none of them are in common parlance. To sum up, the ability allows him to get back 100 times the value of whatever he gives to a person he has a connection with. Currently, that connection is with Lan Fen, his sham wife. He is also joined by Song Yue-lin, who is the manager of his estate, after replacing manager Lin in a fun little mix-up that was entirely Chen Haoran's own fault. Song Yue-lin is a Liquid Meridian realm cultivator and probably an assassin. Last week we found out that the Lan family, or at least 2 people within it, are getting somewhat upset with Chen Haoran's not in communication and not actually turning Lan Fen back over to them. Though it's pretty clear that this is just those 2 individuals wanting to do terrible things to her because they still believe that Lan Fen has no cultivation base, which last week she restored to the 5th layer of the Chi realm. I'll go over the realms and whatnot in just a moment. So, after meeting with Lan Jinjie and thoroughly smacking him because he pushed Chen Haoran around, he, well, he goes back to the mountains. It was a different set of mountains. These ones were in the north. There, he told Song Yue-lin to go and find anything valuable, and while he would supervise. That didn't actually work out. Song Yue-lin refused unless the young master was training or something. Training in the mountains, of course, is being attacked by demonic beasts, like bristle thrush boars. Our young master has gained quite a hatred for those stupid pigs at this point. Then, when Song Yue-lin returned with the findings he had come across, it was one rather sad-looking flower. Then they began evasion training, when Song Yue-lin attracted and then forced to chase Chen Haoran every single one of the animals on the mountain. Song Chen Haoran escaped the wave, but by the end he just found himself cornered with very little chi at a big pool of what looked like water. Song Yue-lin murdered all of the animals that had been chasing Chen Haoran because he could have done that at any time. and then told him that the pond was actually liquid chi, which is the result of a liquid meridian realm dying. If one cultivates with that chi, then it is a fantastic boost to one's cultivation base, as proved when Shenhauren immediately used it to rank up to the 6th layer of the chi realm from the 5th. Then, attracted by the liquid chi that he didn't absorb evaporating, a liquid meridian bear appeared. Uh, I'm assuming it was already tired because it got into a fight and lost against Song Yuelin's silly shadow liquid nonsense. The fight, though, attracted the attention of the local city lord, who is in the first layer of the crystallization realm, who was very upset to find people from the Chen family wandering around making messes. He also recognized Song Yuelin as the hunting dog, quote unquote, of the Chen family, which Chen Haoran, of course, interpreted to mean that, yes, Song Yuelin is indeed one of the assassins for that was just sent to look at whatever's going on at the house. He also found out that the reason Chen Haoran, the one that was there before he transmigrated into his brain, was in Clear Spring City because he is a political hostage. Apparently, the Chen family having made some kind of deal with the city lord to obscure something with Chen Haoran as the collateral. Uh, so, after returning to town and a little while later, Chen Haoran goes into town with Song Yuelin for drinks, in the hopes of getting information about the realm he's living in. That's the place he's living, not the actual realm. Unfortunately, his delicious pork dinner is interrupted by the arrival of Lan Yao, who was somewhat upset at the way Chen Haoran had treated Lan Junjie, apparently slapping your guests and refusing to give them what apparently was agreed upon is foul play. In the course of needling her about her inferiority to Lan Fen, Lan Yao loses her temper and strikes Chen Haoran, who had expected that with his Earth rank cultivation he could fight a ninth rank Qi realm cultivator, only to find out that apparently Lan Yao had somewhere come up with her own Earth rank cultivation. This would, of course, upset local politics since the family all shares that cultivation method. After that, Lan Fen finishes her cultivation training and comes out as a 5th layer Chi realm, which she immediately hides because of reasons. They expect Song Yuelin to figure out what her actual cultivation level is, but they decide to let him think he figured it out and not that they left evidence for him. Sorry, I was napping in a creek before the stream started. So, having finished their cultivation, they get to talking and decide that the time for bringing down the Lan family, as Lan Fan wishes, is right about now, and that the best way that Chen Haoran can help is to act as the social side of the operation, since Lan Fen can't be seen in public. The beginning of this is apparently requires repairing his somewhat murky reputation, which he goes about remedying by buying everyone in the city drinks. I know that would certainly get me to vote for a bear. Free food. I don't know about drinks. Water's fine for me. Anyway, let's begin. Chapter 31. This young master prepares. Lanfen had become a river of metal, and Chen Howren was unlucky enough to stand in the way of her course. Her wooden sword relentlessly flowed around his desperate defense, leaving him scrambling to dodge. It was all the opening she needed. She burst through his hasty blocking like water through a dam and sent his sword flying. In the same motion, her own sword harshly stabbed his chest and Chen Howren fell. Chen Howren rubbed the spot she stabbed, a definite bruise in the making. "You harmonized with the canyon carving sword?" he asked in disbelief. Lan Fen rested her practice sword on her shoulder and smiled triumphantly. "What do you think?" "I think you're stupidly talented." That he was jealous of said talent went unsaid. He'd been using the technique for longer, and he still couldn't figure out how to harmonize with it. Lan Fen offered her hand. "You will learn. We have time, after all." Chen Howren took her hand, and she pulled him up. "Is Song Yue Lin really not watching?" They were in the inner yard's training ground. Chen Howren had originally thought he'd be training alone, since Lan Fen had snuck out of the manor, with Song Yue Lin doubtlessly following her. Instead, she turned back around to train with him. Lan Fen shook her head. He has not left the outer training field, nor is he paying any attention to us." "What's he even doing there?" "Training would be my guess." She quirked her lips. "Perhaps he grew frustrated with the circles I led him in." Lan Fen had already left the manor a few times this week, both openly and secretly, with Song Yue Lin in unseen tow, only to lead him on the most mundane walks across the whole city. Chen Howren huffed a laugh, but he couldn't help but doubt. Lan Fen could tell if Song Yue Lin was paying attention, but not if he was training. It was completely at odds with what she'd shown before. "Observe now," Lan "Observe now," Lan Fen said. Chen Howren threw away the distracting thoughts and focused on watching Lan Fen's harmonization. She flowed into a flurry of stances and strikes. Unlike Song Yue Lin's hard-to-observe harmonization, Lan Fen's was clear to the eye, a white water rapid to wash away whatever blocked it. He compared it to his own canyon carving sword. While he had yet to see Lan Fen use the technique in full, just from the harmonization he could detect a much sharper intent than his own use of it. Was this how a metal spirit root expressed other elemental techniques? Chen Howren squinted. He cycled chi to his legs and in a burst of motion slashed out at Lan Fen. Despite the suddenness of his attack, Lan Fen responded quickly and her sword dance became a proper offense. Chen Howren suffered a few blows before backing away. "Okay, hold on." Lan Fen smiled at him. "Did you find what you were looking for?" "All your strikes are just focused on a single point." He noticed it while watching, and the last exchange just confirmed it. "A river only flows in one direction," the realization dawned on him. "A river only carves in one direction," she corrected him. Chen Howren breathed. His chi cycled into pattern. His sword did not glow. He swung out. Nothing. Again, nothing. He couldn't just focus on empty air. He needed something. He pictured Sung Yue Lin standing in front of him. Chi flowed. Chen Howren felt briefly weightless. The chi spiraled out of control. Chen Howren was knocked down as if kicked in the chest, and he slammed a fist into the ground. "Fuck!" "It was a good attempt," Lan Fen consoled him. "Good isn't enough. Not if I ever want to stand on my own." He pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed. "I should be better than this." "Do not presume it is as easy as I make it look," Lan Fen said. "I simply have more experience than you do." You don't need to make excuses for me, Lanfen. I know my weaknesses. The stuff that mattered had always been something out of reach for him. Now he had a second life to confirm it. It might be easier if I harmonized with the stone carving sword first. He could apply the understanding from the lower rank technique to make it easier to harmonize with the canyon carving sword. I would not count on that, Lanfan somberly said. You will more easily harmonize with an earth rank than a profound tech rank. He frowned. How did you harmonize before this, then? I didn't. What? This is my first time using harmonization. Lanfen smiled upon seeing his shock. I am grateful for you giving me the opportunity. You said you had experience, though. From countless failures. Lanfen sat down next to him. I had desperately tried to harmonize with my mortal rank techniques. There was just never enough to harmonize with. Enough of what? Lanfen rubbed her chin in thought. Wait, she finally said. A higher rank technique is heavy in a way that the lower ranks are not. This is just my own experience, however. I still have more to learn on the topic. What gives them weight, though? What separates the technique ranks from each other? Lanfen tilted her head. Chen Howard was about to ask if she was directing the question to the sky until she suddenly huffed. Who knows? Chen Howard sighed and lay flat. Who does? Assholes who choose not to say. He laughed. I never heard you curse like that before. He paused. Actually, no. Didn't you say you were going to shove a sword up my ass? I wonder who I learned it from. And in my defense, you deserved it. Well, she wasn't wrong. Chen Howard shot up. That reminds me. He rummaged through his storage bag and pulled out a giant brown core. This is for you. He pulled out the other goodies Song Yuelin had given him. I meant to give these to you when you came out of seclusion. Lan Fan raised an eyebrow. A seventh layer liquid meridian realm core. You seem to have had quite the adventure. Song Yuelin killed it. It was definitely an intense experience. He did one last sweep to make sure he had gotten everything. Received 100-fold. Liquid Meridian Realm 7th Layer Mountain King Bear Core. By the way, Chen Howard stopped. In his hand was a single blue moonflower, the same one that Song Yuelin had dropped on him as a reward. A beautiful but ultimately valueless flower. Lan Fen? Here, he said, offering the flower. Lan Fen stared at the flower. Golden eyes slowly rose to meet his own. Thank you, she said, taking the proffered flower. There was no reward. Sorry, Chen Howard wrung his hands. For what? You don't have to accept something if you don't like it. He hesitated. I mean, I would like it if you accepted my gifts, but you can say no if you don't want them. Dangerous words. He couldn't stop himself from saying them, though. He couldn't let himself not say them. Lan Fen twirled the moonflower between her fingers. I do not like flowers. With a sudden motion, she twisted the flower head off and tossed it behind her in a rain of blue petals. Chen Howard flinched. Right, I'll remember that. They sat there in suffocating silence. Chen Howard felt hot in the chill air. What a fool. He rose to leave. I do not like river eels, Lan Fan interrupted him. Chen Howard blinked. Okay? Nor do I like shoddily forged swords. All right? I hate the taste of rice wine. On and on, Lan Fan listed various dislikes. Chen Howard stood there bewildered. Whatever her point was, he couldn't see it. What are you saying? He asked. You would have an easier time getting me gifts if you knew my dislikes, no? Chen Howard dumbly looked at her. He slapped a hand to his face and started laughing. I'll make sure to keep that in mind for next time. Lan Fen stood up and dusted herself off. I do value you, Chen Howard. Without you, I would not be in a position to so easily strike a blow at the Land family. She walked past and briefly squeezed his shoulder. The risks you are taking for my sake is a debt I swear will be repaid. Chen Howren watched her go. He turned back and picked up his sword. Rolling his shoulders, he took a stance and cycled his chi. He needed to practice. He was going to be doing quite a bit of fighting tomorrow, after all. End chapter 31. If she's not going to eat that flower, can I have it? It seems wasteful just to throw it on the ground. It might be delicious. I want to eat that flower. What does a moonflower taste like? I don't think I've eaten a blue flower. I've eaten purple flowers. Are they similar? Well, these are bear problems. You don't need to care about those. Chapter 32. This young master claims a stage. In a world where people just had to train to get magical kung fu superpowers, it was only natural that they'd want to display their metaphysical Dan belts like a graduate from a for-profit dojo. The Clear Spring City arenas were where the strong, both in truth and in their head, congregated to establish dominance over their peers and show off the results of their diligent practice. While the city had various venues for fighting, the ones managed directly by the city lord were the largest and most popular. Centered around a single stadium built out of large blocks of blue-gray stones stretched across a district of arenas, viewing towers and shops that thrived off of blood, sweat, and dignity, both gained and lost. The large stadium was only open for large tournaments or other special events. On those days, some 30,000 spectators would come and witness bloody competition. Unfortunately, it wasn't a place Chen Haoren could enter right now. Chen Haoren and Song Yue Lin waded through invigorated crowds that clustered around various kinds of stages. Some were raised platforms of stone or wood, the other were flat tile-paved affairs. A few were just dirt plots sectioned off by rope. There was a clear yet unspoken division of strength. Higher layer cultivators congregated around the better arenas. Chen Haoren cast his sense out to look for an appropriate location. Somewhere with higher layer cultivators and in an easily visible location. They needed to make a splash after all. Song Yuelin tapped his shoulder.
How about there, young Master Chen?
He pointed out a decently sized square stone stage not far from the main road. Unlike many of the other venues, it had proper seating as well. 3 wooden rows of what looked like gym bleachers. 2 men were fighting atop it when they arrived. Chen Howren reached with his sense. Sixth layer, the both of them. A tall, burly man wielding a great sword, 6 feet long, swung with large sweeping slashes that reminded Chen Howren of the Liquid Meridian Realm bear that Song Yue Lin had fought. The other was a bony-looking man who used a much more standard Jian, much like his own mysterious water-steel sword. The bony man darted around the burly one, trying to bait him into overextending. Hee hee hee. The burly man was implacable, however, and gradually cornered his opponent at the edge of the arena. Seeing his situation become untenable, the bony man shouted, and his sword glowed a bright, poisonous green. He launched himself forward toward the burly man like a striking viper. Rather than use his great sword to block the burly man, planted it into the ground and bellowed out a thunderous roar. It had to have been some kind of technique, as the air distorted around the bony man, and unable to dodge, he was sent careening out of the arena.
What do you think, young Master Chen?
On stage, the burly man was accepting the cheers from the observing crowd. Chen Howren smiled.
It's perfect.
He leaped into the air and landed in the center of the stage. The noise of the crowd stuttered, and the burly man turned to him in surprise. Chen Howren? The man said, eyebrows raised.
My reputation precedes me, I see.
He didn't know if he'd ever get used to being so easily recognized, especially given the reasons why.
Who the fuck are you?
It was a genuine question.
I'm here to make an announcement. You're in the way.
Veins bulged on the burly man's face. You bastard! His cursing was abruptly interrupted when Chen Howren appeared in front of him and buried his fist into the man's gut. The burly man was sent flying off the stage as much as his previous opponent did. Chen Howren scanned the crowd surrounding him. There was no cheering. He could see Song Yue Lin in the stands. The man had laid out a veritable picnic spread around him. He cheerily gave Chen Howren a thumbs up. Chen Howren breathed. He could do this.
I'm here to find someone who can defeat me.
His voice boomed with chi, and he could see curious pedestrians turn his way.
To whoever is talented enough to force this Chen Howren off this stage will receive 10,000 gold taels.
Prepare to hand over your money, then, the burly man roared as he charged back up to the stage. His throat bulged, and he roared, letting loose a furious shock wave. It was nothing compared to the bear Song Yue Lin had fought. Chen Howren cycled his chi and forced his way through the blast. The burly man had time to look shocked before Chen Howren clasped a hand around his throat in a vice grip. The burly man started to choke. Chen Howren paused to soak in the shocked exclamations of the crowd before pivoting on his foot and hurling the cultivator off the stage again. Chen Howren turned back to the audience.
Who's next?
The crowd had nearly doubled in size. Chen Howren had raised the bet to 20,000 gold taels. 6 brave challengers rose to claim it. Chen Howren punched and knocked away a whistling axe head. Taking advantage of the opening, he stepped into his unlucky opponent's guard and landed a punishing blow into his chest. The man collapsed in a heaving fit. 7 challengers have fallen trying. Chen Howren flexed his hands as his latest challenger limped off the stage. All the cultivators who had challenged him so far only possessed mortal rank techniques, and none of them had the skills needed to make up for that gap. It only served to remind him how amazing Lan Fen was. Despite being similarly limited, she crossed that gap with ease. He looked back at Sung Yue Lin. The man was devouring a whole basket of cookies by himself, completely ignoring Chen Howren and disgusting the people surrounding him in the process. Chen Howren snorted and swept his gaze across the crowd.
Is this it?
He jeered.
Perhaps I had not offered enough taels. Since 7 challengers have come and lost, how about I raise the pot by 70,000 taels?
A greedy exclamation reached through the audience. 90,000 taels were no small sum, even for members of the stronger families.
Will you really pay it, though?
A snide voice asked. Emerging from the crowd came a tall youth, cord thin, with a long spear strapped on his back. His hair was a vibrant white. He was dressed luxuriously, all silk and brocade, and carried himself proudly. The Lan family.
On my honor,
Chen Howren replied. The noble youth regarded him with disdain.
And what honor would that be?
Chen Howren gestured grandly.
Come see it for yourself.
Chen Howren sensed his cultivation. 8th layer. He could handle that.
Make sure you bring the money to the Lan family estate yourself, then. Tell them that Lan Si sent you.
The newly named Lan Si pulled the spear off his back and twirled it in his hands. Chen Howren said nothing, but drew his sword in response. They slowly circled each other to the hollering of the audience. It seemed Lan Si was a popular man. Or perhaps they were for him. Lan Si thrust his spear, and Chen Howren took it on the flat of his blade. He felt the force of the youth's chi transfer through the contact and stepped back. The crowd cried out in amazement. It was the first time Chen Howren had been forced to step back since he had entered the stage. He shook out his arm and observed Lance again. The arrogant boy stared back.
Really? Mortal rank? Are you not a wood spirit or root, or are you just trash?
Laughter rose from the crowd, and Lance purpled.
What's your tongue?
They clashed again. Lance's spear whipped out like a snake to keep him at bay. Chen Howren ducked under it and slapped his shoulder into Lance's chest. Unprepared, Lance took it full on, but managed to spin into a trembling recovery rather than fall. He looked murderous, but Chen Howren could see how his grip twitched. Lance stepped back.
What trickery are you playing, Chen Howren?
Flames danced along his spear. Chen Howren smiled.
Who needs tricks? I'm just better than you.
Lance roared and burst forward, his spear becoming a burning lance in his hands. Chen Howren sighed and raised his sword. He had been looking forward to seeing the Lan family's signature methods. Lance's fiery spear glowed bright, and he slammed it straight for Chen Howren's heart. He was slow, though, nowhere near Lan Fen's speed, let alone Song Yue Lin's. There were several options he had to deal with Lance, but those were more effort than necessary. He caught the burning spear in his hands.
What?
Lance cried out, before being violently shaken when Chen Howren forced the spear back. He cycled chi through his sword and slashed the spear in half. Lance looked at the broken half he held in shock, while Chen Howren raised his own half and smashed the flat end of the spearhead down on the land cultivator's head. Lance crumpled. The audience roared their approval as his companions arrived to drag Lance from the stage. Chen Howren let the adulation wash over him. Perhaps the young master's recognition, much like his cultivation, was just another thing he had to make his own before he could properly appreciate it. Loud, chi-enhanced clapping broke through the din of the crowd. Chen Howren looked out and saw a shock of white hair and a sneering face. A very slappable face. A face he did slap. Lan Junjie. The bait had been taken. End chapter 32. This old bear can't get into fighting for sport. Roughhousing with siblings as a young bear is fine, but a grown bear we can't risk not being mobile for a long time. A bear's gotta eat, you understand. I guess you can get soft in that way when others will bring you free food. The only roughhousing a bear gets to do in adulthood is usually with another bear of the opposite gender. Chapter 33. This young master deserves an award. Lan Junjie cut a much cleaner figure compared to the sorry mess Chen Howren had left him. His stride was confident, his head held high, and his chi-enhanced claps were filled with mockery. A final loud clap saw the crowd clearing a path to the stage for him and his entourage. The majority of them were white-haired Lan family relatives, but a few were more humble figures trailing behind them. Chen Howren spied one servant carrying a long cloth-wrapped pole. Lance's unconscious form was carried over to the group, and Lan Junjie didn't spare his fallen cousin a glance and approached the edge of the stage.
Quite the impressive performance, Chen Howren.
Lan Junjie flashed him a mocking smile.
Trying to wash away the shame my sister inflicted on you.
Chen Howren sneered.
Do you want to get slapped again?
Lan Junjie's mockery collapsed into a scowl.
I see you still don't know how to hold your damn tongue. Spare me the preaching and get to your point. Is it not obvious? You are here offering a reward for anyone who can dethrone you.
You? Chen Howren asked incredulously.
Go bring your sister here and stop wasting my time.
Lan Junjie's scowl deepened, and he leapt up to the stage. The servant carrying the cloth pole followed him.
I am more than enough to deal with your buffoonery. Don't think we haven't noticed you trying to get my sister's attention with your actions. After today, you will bother her no longer.
And you're the one who's going to stop me.
You'll find that I'm not the same person you attacked before.
Lan Zhenjie flared his chi. Chi realm, 6th layer. He must have been on the verge of a breakthrough the last time they met. So you advanced a layer and thought you were reborn, is that it? Chen Haoren laughed. Do you think you'll advance to the 7th layer once I beat your ass again? Lan Zhenjie ignored the taunting and held out his hand. The servant hastily unwrapped the cloth-covered pole and revealed it to be a bone-white spear. The tip of it shone with a serrated steel-gray spearhead.
Don't go begging for mercy when I'm through with you.
Don't think I won't slap you again. Chen Haoren raised his sword. The audience grew silent with anticipation. They circled each other on the stage. Chen Haoren darted forward, attempting to bait a response, but Lan Zhenjie held firm. It seemed he'd have to make the first move. Using his sword as a hammer, Chen Haoren battered at Lan Zhenjie's spear. His sword struck nothing but air, though, as Lan Zhenjie rolled his weapon with the blow and brought it back up in a lightning-quick slash towards Chen Haoren's head. He stepped forward and caught the haft of the spear on his neck rather than the blade. Cycling his chi to carry away the force of the blow, Chen Haoren stabbed forward with his sword. Lan Zhenjie deftly avoided the patterned steel and distanced himself. He looked at Chen Haoren with narrowed eyes. Chen Haoren smiled back at him. Lan Zhenjie had clearly noticed something was off about the last exchange, but he couldn't tell what. Lan Zhenjie looked incensed.
Do you think that is enough to gain their upper hand over me?
Without waiting for his response, Lan Zhenjie charged forward. White stars gathered around his garishly white slippers. Distracted by the stars, Chen Haoren was forced to hastily dodge a spear thrust to his chest. Chen Haoren used his hand to bat away Lan Zhenjie's spear, but hissed in pain and jumped back when Lan Zhenjie slashed its serrated edge through his palm. Chen Haoren looked at his bleeding hand. Qi dulled most of the pain, but he could still feel its sting. He didn't think the blade was that close, and the spearhead had cut too cleanly through his enhanced skin for it to be a normal weapon. It had to be another treasure on the level of his mysterious water-steel sword, at least. Rather than press his advantage, Lan Zhenjie planted the butt of his spear into the stone base and smugly watched Chen Haoren.
Not so arrogant now, are we?
Chen Haoren didn't dignify that with a response. He raised his sword instead. Again. Stars whistled around Lan Zhenjie's feet, and Chen Haoren was buried under the flurry of blows that followed. Lan Zhenjie made judicious use of the longer reach his weapon provided, and interrupted every attempt Chen Haoren made to close the distance. White stars flashed, and Chen Haoren felt a stinging pain as the spearhead slid across his side. He jumped back and clasped his bloody hand to his bloody side. Lan Zhenjie paced predatorily, a savage grin on his face. The tip of his spear scraped along the stone tiles of the stage in perfect unison with the undulating cheers of the crowd.
What's wrong, Chen Haoren? Where's your bravado gone?
Credit where it was due, Lan Zhenjie was more skilled with a spear than Chen Haoren was with a sword. The pathetic figure that Chen Haoren had slapped around his training ground wasn't the full extent of Lan Zhenjie's strength, nor with his equipment. Those white stars weren't just a distraction, the slippers were some kind of artifact, something that made it harder to follow Lan Zhenjie's movements.
Nothing to say, Chen Haoren.
He pointed to Lan Zhenjie's slippers. Those don't look like men's shoes. Chen Haoren would know. He owned quite a few. He smirked. Are you wearing your sister's? The audience laughed and Lan Zhenjie flushed.
You're a dead man, he growled.
So it's true? Chen Haoren asked, surprised. Lan Zhenjie dashed forward with a roar. Chen Haoren knocked his sword against the serrated steel and trailed the blade down the bone-white wood of the spear haft. Lan Zhenjie's arm glowed green and Chen Haoren's head snapped back. The pain came moments later. Lan Junjie's palm flickered and split into green after images and fell like rain on his head. White stars flickered, and Chen Haoren couldn't tell if they belonged to Lan Junjie or his own spotted vision. He cycled chi to his arm and flung it out. Lan Junjie ducked a wide blow and swept his feet out from under him. Chen Haoren rolled out of sheer instinct and narrowly avoided Lan Junjie burying his spear where his chest had been.
Can you see the difference between us, Chen Haoren?
Lan Junjie roared.
This is the price of your arrogance. This is what you deserve for defending the Lan family.
Chen Haoren checked his nose for blood and was relieved when his hand came away clean. Lan Fan had told him that the Lan family's scattering petal palm was hard to withstand, and he could see why. For the record, I could have avoided that, he said. Lan Junjie snorted in disdain.
I think the next thing I'll cut will be your tongue.
Shenhauer ignored him and looked around. The audience had been going wild. He could hear some begin to chant Lan Junjie's name. He smiled. Took them long enough. Lan Junjie frowned.
What?
His ears pricked. The din of the crowd washed over them, several times louder than before. Lan Junjie swept his gaze across the audience. The crowd had nearly doubled in size. People packed every open space in the stands and around the stage, and more were coming every minute. I'm thankful you're such a moron, Lan Junjie. Chen Haoren smiled. None of this would have been possible if you weren't. Indeed, his biggest worry was that Lan Junjie had figured out that he had an earth rank cultivation from the last beating he handed him and informed Lan Yao, and, by extension, the Lan family. It's time for this play to end, however. Veins bulged in Lan Junjie's neck.
What are you planning, you bastard?
The note of confusion in Lan Junjie's tone was music to his ears. Chen Haoren charged. White stars whirled around Lan Junjie's feet and obscured his movements. Too bad Lan Junjie was nowhere near as fast as Lan Fun or Song Yue Lin. Chen Haoren cycled his chi and forced his way past with a vicious stab. Lan Junjie's glowing palm flickered out like a rain of petals. Chen Haoren's fist scattered them and buried it into his gut. Lan Junjie jumped back to lessen the blow, but fell to his knees.
What?
He looked at Chen Haoren with wide eyes. It seemed that he'd finally felt the truth. Chen Haoren laughed and felt exhilaration course through him. His sword glowed blue. Lan Junjie gritted his teeth and flared his chi. He shot forward towards Chen Haoren like a cannonball. Stars burned phosphorus white along his legs, and his arms shone a vibrant green. Canyon carving sword. Blue light carved the stone stage in half. Lan Junjie's movement was reversed, and he was swept away in a river of energy. Dust kicked up in the cloud and cleared off with another pulse of Chen Haoren's chi. Lan Junjie was buried in a trench that extended from the arena. His bone-white spear was split down the middle. A green light was quickly fading from his body, the remnants of some defensive treasure, perhaps. It was clear that even when holding back, Chen Haoren underestimated just how strong the canyon carving sword was. The crowd was silent. Shock and awe briefly robbed them of their reason. Chen Haoren looked for Song Yue Lin and found him in the sea of faces. Song Yue Lin gave him a thumbs up. He breathed. Lan Yao! Chi carried his roar clear and far. Is this who you send to face me? A sixth layer with only a mere profound cultivation to his name? Chen Haoren circled the edge of the ruined stage. I will not be further insulted like this, Yan Yao. I will not be made a fool of by your lies. He flared his chi, and dust and debris were carried off with its force. Face me again, Lan Yao. We will see whose earth rank is superior. The crowd was roused from their stupor as if a bomb had gone off. Shock, fear, excitement, 1,000 different emotions for 1,000 different people blended together. Chen Haoren felt thousands of daggers staring at him. Song Yuelin appeared next to him. The daggers he felt were momentarily blunted.
Shall we go, young Master Chen?
Song Yuelin asked. There's still one more thing I have to do. Chen Haoren looked over to Lan Junjie. His companions had rushed over to his fallen form and shot Chen Haoren fearful looks.
Get your storage bag ready, Song Yuelin.
He was going shoe shopping. End chapter 33. Hello, Itsutai. You would like a recap? Excellent, I have recaps for you. Would you like a recap of just what I've gone over so far, or would you like last week's as well? Oops, I can fix that. Thank you for warning me. How much would you like me to recap? Ah, well, today we have covered, let's see, let me just cover my notes. Chen Howard has been implementing his plan to catch the Land family out in their lies. He took a stage in one of the public arenas where young cultivators go to show off their progress in their super kung fu martial arts. In the progress, he got on the stage and declared that anyone who could push him off it would get 10,000 gold taels. Then, after beating 6 more people, the bet had gone up to 20,000, and seeing that he was not getting any more challengers, he raised it to 70,000 by another 70,000. He beat some no-name Land family member who didn't even practice their main techniques, and then was challenged by Lan Junjie, who you may remember he previously met and slapped the shit out of like the little shit he is. Apparently, Lan Junjie had his own special weapon in a similar level to the water steel sword that Chen Haoren uses, and had borrowed his sister's shoes, which had their own artifact abilities. And now he's kicked Lan Junjie's ass, as expected. Indeed. All while drawing attention to the fact that apparently the Lan family does have an Earth Ring cultivation method. By revealing his own cultivation method, he has proved that he would know what they feel like. Oh, this is a gem. Let me just put up the recap for last week for you. Scribble, 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 scribble. There you go. I'm sure you remember the various realms and ranks of things, so I'll just spare you that. He's going to steal his shoes, though. I'm very sure. Chapter 34. This young master thinks about the future. You stole his shoes? Called it. Lan Fan asked after hearing the end of his report. She tightened the bandage around his side. He and Song Yuelin made their way back to the manor, making judicious use of Song Yuelin's liquid meridian cultivation to clear the way. Lan Fan had been waiting for them in his office to be debriefed on the situation.
Technically, they're Lan Yao's shoes,
Chen Haoren said. He waved his bandaged hand at Song Yuelin, who brought out the white slippers with a whip of liquid shadow.
I can't believe you made me carry them,
Song Yuelin complained.
You have a perfectly good storage bag yourself.
Who asked you to eat all the cookies? He'd been looking forward to a post-workout snack.
You should have beat him faster then, Song Yuelin blandly replied. I could have had lunch too, with how long you took.
This is why I make you carry shoes. Chen Haoren grabbed the slippers from the tendril of liquid shadow and placed them on his desk. What even are these, anyway?
The White Dipper slippers,
Lan Fan answered.
a mortal rank artifact. The stars it releases are meant to bedazzle an opponent's eyes and obfuscate the wearer's movements.
The young master was certainly left bedazzled by them, Song Yuelin butted in.
Shut up. I let him do that. I needed to wait for a big enough crowd.
Whatever you say, young Master Chen.
Ignoring him, Chen Haoren looked at Lan Fen and motioned to the slippers.
You want them? They should be pretty useful. I'm fine, thank you.
Lan Fen politely declined.
It would be better to make use of them yourself.
He'd already tried, but they didn't fit. Chen Haoren unceremoniously dumped the shoes into his storage bag. Lan Fen, accepting them, had been a long shot anyway. Song Yue Lin suddenly turned his head.
It appears we have some visitors, young Master Chen.
Chen Haoren clicked his tongue. He had expected people to mob his door, but it hadn't been even a day yet.
Turn them away.
Is that really what you want to do, young Master Chen?
Song Wei Lin asked.
Now is a crucial time for you to control the narrative. The more public you are, the more damning the Lan family's secret is in comparison.
I agree with Manager Song.
Lan Fen nodded.
Fine.
He sighed and rose from his desk.
I'll go meet them.
Lan Fen stopped him.
I still have some things to discuss with you. Manager Song can go receive them for now.
She gave Song Yue Lin a pointed look. Song Yue Lin blinked innocently. Lan Fen sighed and wrapped an arm around Chen Haoren's neck.
Leave us, please.
Chen Haoren placed a hand on her arm. Her firm grip was surprisingly nice.
I beg your pardon, I didn't quite hear that.
Song Yue Lin cupped his ear as if straining to hear her. Lan Fen's hold tightened into a vice grip. Chen Haoren immediately started tapping her arm.
I have something I'd like to discuss with Chen Haoren in private. Please go away.
What?
Song Yue Lin drawled. Chen Haoren tapped Lan Fen's arm harder.
I have dearly missed my husband and would like some time to spend alone with him,
Lan Fen said through clenched teeth.
Oh, why didn't you say so?
Song Yue Lin backed away to the door, a sly smile on his face.
Far be it from me to get in the way of your quiet time together.
Chen Haoren's tapping became desperate.
Begone,
Lan Fen ordered.
I'll be on my way now. Take care.
The door slammed shut.
annoying pest,
Lan Fen muttered. Lan Fen! Chen Haoren gasped. My neck! Sorry, that's just funny. Oh, I've got little tears in my eyes. Oh boy. Oh, gotta wipe these up. Oh, sorry about that. Oh dear. That's just screwed me up. Lan Fen finally reacted, releasing her stranglehold and stepping back.
My apologies. I acted without thought. Can you hold my arm instead next time?
He rubbed his neck. He hadn't exactly been choking, but she had some strong arms. Lan Fen had the grace to look guilty at least.
I will bear that in mind. So what's up? What?
Lan Fen looked startled.
You needed to talk to me, didn't you?
Lan Fen was silent, far too silent.
He hesitated. You do have something to say to me, right? Yes, she said forcefully. I do.
Chen Haoren waited for an answer while Lan Fen tried to burn a hole into the wall behind him.
Good work,
she finally said.
Thank you.
Now,
things will get more complicated for you in the short term. I will do what I can to help alleviate it. I would hope so. I'm relying on you. Your faith is not misplaced,
she replied. She looked as if she was making an oath.
No need to be so serious, he trailed off. I was joking.
They were about to descend once again into awkward silence when there was a sudden knocking at the door. Chen Haoren and Lan Fen shared a look. The door creaked open, and a servant carefully walked in and set down a tray of small flower-shaped pastries and a pot of rice wine before fleeing the room.
Song Yue Lin,
Lan Fen said.
What a nosy fucker, he instantly replied.
They looked at each other and burst into laughter. Chen Howren held out a chair for Lan Fen. She poured a cup for him in return.
To a successful first step, he toasted her. To your excellent display in the arenas,
Lan Fen toasted in return. The wine was crisp. The pastries tasted like flowers and honey. The mood was good. Chen Howren felt the adrenaline from the day's fighting finally fade away. His actions today would have consequences. Some had already started knocking on his door, but he ignored them for now.
Lan Fen,
He said,
yes? What do you plan to do once the Lan family is finished?
what Lan Fen would do after succeeding in her revenge was something that had been on his mind for a while now. She hummed and nursed her drink.
I plan to take the palace exams and enter the palace school,
She answered.
government service. The resources the Empire can call upon are unparalleled.
Lan Fen rested her hand in the palm of her hand.
I will be demanded to prove myself, but for a talented cultivator without other backing, Imperial service is their quickest path of ascension. I will need it if I want to advance to the Liquid Meridian realm in a timely manner.
I could be your backing. Chen Howren strangled that thought before it could reach his lips. Just thinking about it made him feel ridiculous. Lan Fen's strength outpacing his ability to support her was an eventuality he'd long expected. That didn't mean he wasn't prepared for it. He drummed his fingers along his cup. He was already reaching his limits in what he could procure in Clear Spring City. The powerful interests in the city had already divided up its resources such that even his massive wealth couldn't move them. The wilderness outside the city was no better. He had to rely on Song Yue Lin to find anything of worth, and there was no guarantee the man would continue doing so in the future. Even with the rewards given by the gifting power, he wasn't confident he could help himself reach the Liquid Meridian realm, let alone Lan Fen. He couldn't even get her a better cultivation method. The ease with which he'd acquired his Earth Rank method blinded him to how difficult it was to find even a mortal rank method, let alone anything profound or higher. At least if she went to the palace school, Lan Fen could get an Earth Rank or potentially even a Heaven Rank cultivation method with her skills. Where would that leave him once she left? Lan Fen was his only connection. He would have to follow her if he wanted to keep using the gifting power. Would he be allowed to follow her, though? He reached for his throat, remembering the way her arm coiled around it, and before that, how her fingers traced over it like knives when they faked sleeping together. Would she even want him to follow?
Are you all right?
Lan Fen asked with a concerned look. Yeah, he coughed.
Just not looking forward to all the talking I'm going to have to do.
Chen Howren downed the rest of his cup. It would be a lie to say he didn't have an idea how to open up the gifting powers connection slot. He had just gotten comfortable with Lan Fen after all this time. Too comfortable, perhaps. It was the same flaw that Song Yue Lin tried to exploit, except he had already thrown in more than just his lot with Lan Fen.
What of you, Chen Howren?
Lan Fen asked.
What plans do you hold for the future?
He held off by answering by taking another bite of pastry. He grimaced and washed it down with suddenly dry wine. It needed more honey.
I'm not sure, he said, but I don't think I'll have a place in Clear Spring City after this.
That, at least, was clear. He had no future here. It was a familiar, bitter feeling. End chapter 34. I'm not sure why he will have no place in the city. If they do their job right, he should have pushed all of his competitors out of the territory. Well, let's not forbear to speculate on. Chapter 35. This young master might need a day off. At the rate that people came to visit, Shenhauern would think someone was hosting a party in his manor that he didn't know about. Even with Song Yue Lin turning away visitors with weaker cultivation, he was still receiving guests one after another. Forget all his worries about being targeted and robbed, he should have been more concerned about all the talking he'd been doing. Nevertheless, they had a narrative to craft.
To think Lan Yao had the gall to lie in front of all our peers and say she beat me through the difference in our layers. If I had known she was hiding an earth rank cultivation, I would have taken her more seriously. Who knows what the Lan family plans to do? I thought they wanted my cultivation method at first, but they had their own the whole time. Marriage? Sorry, I'm taken. After using up his quota for tea, snacks, and small talk for the year, Chen Howren waved off his last guest with a polite smile. As soon as they were out of sight, he collapsed onto the plush couch of his receiving room. This is exhausting, he sighed.
You're doing a wonderful job, young Master Chen,
Song Yue Lin said, appearing behind him out of nowhere as he was wont to do. Chen Howren didn't even bother trying to hit him. Spare me the praise. He is right, Lan Fen said, striding into the room. You are handling it well. He sent a tired smile her way. Thank you.
I'm sensing a bit of bias here,
Song Yue Lin said, looking hurt. Of course I'm biased. Lan Fen is far more pleasant company compared to you. Song Yue Lin dramatically clutched his chest.
Your words wound me.
You'll live, Chen Howren snorted. Is there anybody else?
No one important,
Song Yue Lin replied.
I've taken the liberty to shoo the rest away.
Good. He couldn't deal with anyone else today. He turned to Lan Fen. How's the Lan family? Quiet. She took a seat opposite him, one that placed Song Yue Lin as far from her as possible. They have not made any large movements as of yet. I expect that to change once the other families begin to pressure them to confirm the existence of their Earth rank method. And how long will that take? A rumor will soon spread that the Lan family purchased a pure redwood tree heart. Lan Fen rested her head in her palm. Following that, word will reach the other families that Patriarch Lan has been cultivating this Earth rank method for the past year. Chen Howren made a noise of understanding, while Song Yue Lin curiously looked between them. At the auction, Lan Fen said that she wanted people to see the pure redwood tree heart. A powerful wood element treasure, plus a rumor that the Lan Patriarch was cultivating a stronger method, were worthy of at least being investigated, even if it was nothing in the end. Lan Fen, all the while, would stoke their fears of the powers in Clear Springs City until they tore apart the Lan family for her in their paranoia. It was a good plan, but a time-consuming one. Shinhammer could see why she said his involvement sped up the process.
What about the City Lord?
He asked. How do you think he'll take this?
He won't dare have any thoughts of stealing the technique from you. He knows better.
Song Yue Lin smiled.
That being said, he probably is very annoyed right now.
Does his opinion of me matter? You said so yourself. He's all bark and no bite in front of the Chen family. Not to mention the fact that the City Lord seemingly never bothered to rein his predecessor in, despite how notorious he became. He doubted the man would start now. Will the Lan family not take action? Lan Fen asked. They would have done it already if they wanted to. Chen Haoran cast a deep look at Song Yue Lin. The man smiled and said nothing. If the Chen family had an issue with what they were doing, he was sure the assassin would have stopped them long ago. That didn't mean the Chen family not getting involved was entirely a good thing. Whatever deal they had, that the City Lord was clearly meant to be with the city. Whatever deal they had with the City Lord was clearly meant to be low key, and yet his predecessor was anything but. Whatever their reasons, the Chen family not intervening didn't bode well for the young master's relationship with them. Originally, that would be something Chen Howard would celebrate when he had their Black Ops guy literally standing behind him. Not so much. Getting back to my point, he said, shaking off the morbid thoughts. Do you think the City Lord will do anything about the Lan family? While he was still unsure of the particulars of how the government around here functioned, it was obvious that the strongest were the ones in charge. While the Lan Patriarch might not be a threat to the City Lord now, his superior cultivation method meant he would be one in the future should he ascend to the Crystal Transformation realm.
It depends, Song Yuelin shrugged. It's not like this particular situation hasn't happened elsewhere. There's no guarantee that Patriarch Land will successfully advance, so typically speaking, the City Lord shouldn't be too concerned.
But the City Lord is only at the first layer of the crystal transformation realm,
Lan Fan said. Song Yuelin raised an eyebrow and smiled her way.
Precisely.
I don't follow, Chen Haoren said. Song Yuelin graciously nodded toward Lan Fen. She rolled her eyes but spoke anyway.
While the City Lord is certainly strong as an individual, he's not beyond the strength of the major families to resist if they came together. Wouldn't the Empire step in if they did?
That would be terrible,
Song Yuelin and Lan Fen said simultaneously. Lan Fen and Song Yuelin looked at each other. Song Yuelin looked delighted that they were so in sync, while Lan Fen turned away in disgust.
The Empire having to intervene would be catastrophic for both the City Lord and the families,
She continued.
Thus, both sides will try to avoid coming into direct conflict with each other. Politics, huh?
Chen Haoren muttered distastefully.
Yes, if Patriarch Land can advance to the Crystal Transformation Realm, then, without the backing of the other families, the City Lord will be powerless. He will be looking for any opportunity to nip this issue in the bud. Do you think we can loop the City Lord in on our plan, then?
Chen Haoren asked.
That is an option, yes.
I suppose I'll tell him myself, then,
Song Yuelin said.
It's been a few years since I snuck into his palace.
Leave a note on his pillow, then,
Chen Haoren suggested.
Are you trying to get me killed?
He was, but that was beside the point.
So, what do you think the Lion family's next move will be?
He asked Lan Fen. She drummed her fingers on the armrest of the chair.
The Lan family is not prepared to deal with the City Lord or the families quite yet. They will deny and try to buy as much time for the Patriarch as they can. There will probably be moves over the next week by various forces to try and get a grasp of the situation. Do you think they'll try to rally around the Lan family? The Patriarch has not reached the peak of the Liquid Meridian realm, so whether the other families will support them is yet to be seen.
The Lan family will certainly be pressured to give it.
The Lan family will certainly be pressured to give up benefits, however. I take it the next stage then is to convince the other major families that they don't want the Lan family to have that much power.
Lan Fen nodded.
Precisely.
And how do you plan to tilt their opinion against the Lan family?
Song Yuelin interrupted.
Lan Fen smiled.
Sweetly at the man. Chen Haoren felt chills seeing it.
When enough weakness is exposed, a wild animal will only think to devour. Would you not agree, Manager Song?
Song Yuelin raised an eyebrow.
Oh?
Chen Haoren didn't know what was worse, Song Yuelin analyzing Lan Fen or him being impressed with what he found. As it stood, he was already seeing far too many similarities between the two. Song Yuelin smiled.
I must say, Lady Fen, I admire your mind. Whoever saw fit to pair you with young Master Chen, despite you, he paused, lacking certain qualities, was wise.
A subtle flare of his chi made it clear what he meant.
You show up his many weaknesses.
The fuck was that supposed to mean? Lan Fen smiled back.
He lacks capable help. I only feel that it is my duty to assist him where his servants fail to.
Song Yuelin laughed. Lan Fen laughed. Chen Haoren sighed and looked for more tea. This was going to be his whole week, he could tell. End chapter 35. As far as I can tell, this has been his entire life since Sung Yue Lin took over for Manager Lin. He should really be getting used to it by now. Chapter 36. This young master almost had fun. Chen Haoren sat in his office paging through a book. Various invitations and letters were haphazardly scattered across his desk and spilled onto the floor. Lan Fen's prediction of the Lan family's troubles had proven accurate. Every day, her informants came to report some new family making a show of visiting their compound, or other cultivators challenging members to public duels, not to mention whatever was going on behind the scenes. The Land family, for their part, tried to operate as if it was business as usual, strongly denying these false rumors and attempting to smear Chen Haoren. Notably, Lan Yao and Lan Junjie hadn't been seen at all since the time this mess started. Chen Haoren could only imagine that they were being given a rough time by the higher-ups in the family. Not to say that they weren't having a rough time themselves. There was currently a large hole right in front of his property's gate. A liquid meridian realm had tried to sneak into the manor the other night. Lan Fen had of course spotted him long before he trespassed, and Song Yue Lin wasn't far behind her, immediately sensing the man as soon as he jumped over the walls, and wasting no time in slitting the man's throat and tossing his body out into the streets to serve as an example. While they hadn't seen the fight directly, he could tell by the grudging respect Lan Fan had shown while she narrated the events that it wasn't a close fight at all. His window opened, and with the breeze came the devil himself.
I have returned, young Master Chen,
Song Yue Lin sang. The wind swept through and scattered all the papers on his desk. Chen Haoren looked down at his book. He lost his page. He closed the book with a sigh. How did the speaking with the city lord go?
My infiltration into his palace was a complete success.
Song Yuelin clapped his hands in joy. He paused.
He will have to replace his roof, though.
Chen Haoren stared.
Don't look at me like that. It was your fault anyway.
How is it my fault?
You told me to leave a note on his pillow.
You actually did that?
Of course I did,
Song Yuelin said, his eyes starting to water.
Were you truly trying to get me killed?
Chen Haoren ignored his blubbering. What did the city lord say? Song Yuelin's crocodile tears disappeared.
He's given his approval for your little plan. He'll be posting more guard patrols around the manor, and we'll make sure to check any overt retaliation by the Lamb family.
That's a relief.
I imagine he's relieved too. I didn't think that coward would have made a move at all until the palace exams were over.
Are they really that serious to worry him that much? Song Yuelin shrugged.
The officials who oversee the exam are higher rank than he is and report directly to the palace. Should something disturb the exams, then one word from them could spell the end of his career.
I see. His estimation of the Empire rose again. It's good that everything is settled now. Chen Haoren rose and made to leave. I'm going to train. You can go do whatever.
May I accompany you then, young Master Chen?
Chen Haoren considered it. Fine, he grudgingly agreed. He wanted to practice the canyon carving sword today anyway. Having Song Yuelin around would help preserve the training grounds. They left his office and made their way down to the manor's grand hallways. Song Yuelin nattered away while Chen Haoren paid half attention and politely said a word now and then.
This isn't the way to the inner courtyards,
Song Yuelin suddenly said. No, Chen Haoren casually replied. I want to use the outer training ground today. It had been a while since he'd gone, after all. Plus, he had to admit he was getting a bit tired of getting slapped around in a clear view of the servants. The inner training ground wasn't exactly private, and the courtyard was heavily trafficked.
Do you often use that training ground?
He could recognize the attempt to fish for information, but he didn't know for what purpose, though. Yes, Chen Haoren cautiously answered. I have before.
I see,
Song Yuelin said. He spoke no further, seemingly dropping the topic. Chen Haoren chewed over the exchange in his mind. Lan Fen had said that Song Yuelin used the outer training grounds before. Was he worried that he'd lose a place to privately train? If so, he didn't mind being the shoe on the other foot for once. Chen Haoren stretched and breathed in qi and fresh air. He smelled wildflowers and pine needles. The outer training ground was as pristine as the last time he had left it. Whatever Song Yuelin had been doing here didn't seem to leave any marks either. Then again, the assassin was probably better at cleaning up his tracks. Chen Haoren shivered at the thought and turned to more relevant issues instead. Lan Fen was here. A small table had been arranged with tea and sweetmeats. Lan Fen, the picture of a perfect noble, elegantly sat beside it with a cup in hand. A maidservant with short, steel-gray hair stood behind, and he recognized her as one of the people Lan Fen brought into the manor, a fourth-layer cultivator.
Lady Fen, what a pleasant surprise! Song Yuelin called out. What brings you here?
Lan Fen took a long, drawn-out sip from her teacup. Chen Haoren counted the seconds. 3 minutes later, she deigned to respond.
Relaxing. At a training ground? They are familiar territory to me after all.
She offered her cup to the maid, who immediately refilled it.
It is good that you came now. Now I have some entertainment to go with my tea. Is it truly safe for you to be so close to a cultivator training, though? Song Yuelin asked. His smile was sly. While I know you were once a promising cultivator yourself, it's not good to risk your safety by ignoring reality.
Lan Fen raised an eyebrow.
I assure you, Manager Song, I am fine. I'm sure that you and Chen Haoren will protect me from any accidents.
She smiled.
Not that I expect any accidents to occur with a liquid meridian realm supervising. Can we get on with it?
Chen Haoren interjected. He had heard enough of their veiled sniping to last a lifetime.
Of course, young Master Chen.
Liquid shadow fell from Song Yuelin's hands and flooded over the ground, reaching Lan Fen's chair and stopping just short of her startled maidservant. Lan Fen idly kicked her foot out and watched the shadows switch shut with the movement.
Most impressive,
She said, as if praising a dog who had performed a particularly clever trick. Chen Haoren and Song Yuelin faced each other in the field of shadows.
Hey, he whispered, can you not hit me in the face this time?
Song Yuelin lifted an eyebrow, but he subtly nodded back in understanding. Chen Haoren felt appreciation for the man. He wasn't trying to impress Lan Fen with his skill or anything, but there were more graceful ways to lose than getting backhanded across the face.
The first move is yours, young Master Chen.
Song Yuelin beckoned. He rushed forward, and fast and low, his sword trailing liquid shadow. Song Yuelin twisted into a roundhouse kick, and Chen Haoren, startled at the unexpected move, dropped down. The quick rush, the kick rushed past his head so fast that he felt wind blast his face. With terrified instinct, he stabbed his sword into Song Yuelin's chest. He was bracing himself for the inevitable counter when he felt the sword sink in. Song Yuelin flew backwards and, like a stone in water, fell into the liquid shadow with a splash. Chen Haoren looked at his sword with wide eyes, then back to where Song Yuelin had fallen.
Song Yuelin?
He tentatively called out. The shadows erupted.
Oh, the pain!
Song Yuelin wailed. He convulsed on the ground like a dying fish.
Young Master Chen, it's only a practice match. You needn't be so forceful.
Chen Haoren's concern vanished.
Is that blood? I'm bleeding!
Song Yuelin raised a finger high in the air, a single bead of blood resting on the tip.
Young Master Chen, call a doctor, quickly!
What did I even expect from you? He sighed.
I was only trying to help you.
With shadows covering the rest of his body, Song Yuelin looked like a disconnected head and floating arm in black water.
You wanted to look good in front of Lady Fen, did you not?
His voice was both loud and obnoxious. Chen Haoren face-palmed. Lan Fen chuffed a laugh.
Go on, she encouraged. Your opponent is still moving. You should finish him off.
That's not a bad idea, he growled, his sword glowing blue. Song Yuelin's eyes went wide.
What happened to mercy for the fallen?
He cried out. Canyon carving sword! Chen Haoren got to train the canyon carving sword, Lan Fen got her entertainment, and Song Yuelin almost got what was coming to him. Unfortunately, the man was as slippery as an eel and remained unscathed. Chen Haoren, sweaty and tired, strolled over to Lan Fan's little table and picked up a few choice sweets before sitting on the ground next to her. Song Yue Lin cleared the liquid shadows with a wave of his hand and kept his distance.
Did you have fun?
Lan Fan asked.
I did,
Chen Haoren replied. He was familiar with those words and that tone. It meant what she was about to say next would not be as fun.
So what unfun thing do you have in store for me? This will be very fun, I assure you. The Lan family? Now is about the right time.
Lan Fan smiled. It was vicious in its joy. She rose from her chair and offered her hand.
Are you up for a bit of night hunting?
End chapter 36. Night hunting is when I do my best work. I'm glad they're taking the time to make sure that they stay well fed. How are we doing there in chat? All good? The music hasn't spiked again to be incredibly loud. Good. Chapter 37. This young master should have known. A moonless night had fallen over Clear Spring City, and again he and Lan Fan stole out like thieves. After leaving the city proper, they made their way to the stretch of forest that separated flat civilization from towering mountains. Rather than go any deeper, they instead circled eastward under the cover of the brush. He cycled chi to his eyes to better see, but there was a limit to his vision in a world with no light. Even Lan Fen seemed to fade in and out of existence like a ghost. The only thing he was certain of was that her fired layers of chi cultivation. Like a beacon, he locked his sense onto it and used it to guide his path.
Stop here,
Lan Fan said. She crouched low and peered past the bushes into the cleared land that surrounded Clear Spring City. He leaned over and looked into the darkness at a mishmash of lights. A few tall walking fires became men carrying torches. Soft square lights were the windows of illuminated buildings. Between both lights were numerous glowing orange lights low to the ground and evenly spaced. It reminded of Chen Haoren of a plane runway if someone had filled the whole tarmac with lights rather than just the sides. Amidst the lights, he saw familiar shocks of white hair.
Lan Fen,
He whispered, "What is this place?"
a medicine garden, she whispered back. One of many that Lan family owns. One of many that the Lan family owns.
He knew enough to know she meant spirit herbs instead of literal medicine. Although, given the way many spirit herbs could be consumed for immediate effect, perhaps the term wasn't that far off. The orange lights must have been the spirit herbs then. He tapped Lan Fen on the shoulder. She looked back and he waved his middle finger at her. She held up 2 fingers of her own and returned to observing. Song Yue Lin had indeed followed them and was close by.
What's the plan?
He asked.
Sneak in, steal everything we can, and burn whatever we cannot.
A simple enough smash and grab then. He felt his adrenaline start to rush and mix with anxiety as he processed the situation. He had been through plenty of exciting situations ever since waking in this world, but he still felt a strange fearful glee facing this one. They were dressed like ninjas and ready to rob an unsuspecting company blind. It had a sort of criminal charm to it, the kind he'd fantasized about but never been reckless enough to do back on Earth. He tamped a lid on his boiling emotions and focused.
What do we do about the guards?
They were the biggest variable to deal with. While it wasn't too far for him to sense their cultivation, he was sure the Lan Fan wouldn't lead them into a situation they couldn't handle.
There are 3 at the 8th layer.
Lan Fan didn't turn around.
I will handle them. Kill the rest.
Chen Haoren stopped. His rising adrenaline flatlined.
Excuse me?
Lan Fan turned to face him.
Is there an issue? Do we really need to kill everyone? You were not so squeamish when you killed the thugs from before. Why are you hesitating now?
He could hear the frown on her face.
They were trying to kill me, not the same as going over and killing people who've never done anything to me. The Lan family is already your enemy. What more reason do you need?
The Land family is my enemy because of my own decisions. These people have done nothing to me. And they are still your enemy. Do you think they will show you the same courtesy? I'm not just going to kill everyone I pick a fight with, he said, growling, frustrated. You should have told me what you were planning before we came out here. He would have stayed behind if he had known. What did you expect then? Lan Fan harshly replied. All of our actions till now have been to cause the downfall of the Lan family. What do you think that means? Do you think the other families would be content to just taking away their wealth and status? There was murder in her voice. Do you think I will? This was always going to end in bloodshed. I refuse to believe you had no idea. I know what will happen to the Land family, he bit back. I was never going to stop you from getting your revenge. Then what do you want? Do you think they will show you mercy? Shall I lead the guards over here so that they can try to kill you? Yes. The venom with which he spoke cut short her next words. Bring them here right now, and if any of them try to kill me, I'll kill them. He looked to where he thought her eyes were. I'm not about to put myself in a situation where I have to take a life, though. A black void stared back. Not for someone else. Never again. The air was thick with tension and something else that weighed down on Chen Haoren. He didn't know what the feeling was till he felt it emanating from Lan Fen. It was her presence. Something that had once been so comfortable now became stifling. You said you wanted to become more valuable to me. Her voice was cold. There are somewhat things I won't give away, Lan Fen, he said, his voice grave. Not even to you. Are you going to get in my way then, Chen Haoran? No, he looked away. I'm hypocritical enough to support everything you do, even the things I disagree with. Lan Fen was silent. At that moment, he would have done anything for just a flash of light so he could see her face. I will be back, she finally said. She disappeared into the night, the crunch of leaves the only sign of her passing, and even that soon vanished. Chen Haoren sighed and sat heavily at the base of a nearby tree. He looked up to the stars, but found them blocked by the foliage. He sighed again. It was a huge risk to argue with Lan Fen. Not only would this potentially ruin their relationship, Song Yue Lin no doubt heard all of it. His behavior was now a clear break with how the young master would act. He knew that his predecessor wasn't shy from killing, at least. Song Yue Lin appeared, looking more shadow than man in the darkness. Chen Haoren didn't react. Just beyond the tree line, they saw lights silently snuffed out one by one. Soon the sound of fighting and screaming could be heard. Steel hissed and techniques ignited and fizzled in the same moment. Lan Fen had started her bloody work. She's quite skilled, Song Yue Lin remarked. I haven't met someone at a level so below me who could hide their cultivation as well as her. Song Yue Lin tilted his head as a few particularly loud screams were cut short. Good at fighting, too. Chen Haoren said nothing. I think your sister would like her. What do you want, Song Yue Lin? He demanded. How could this servant despise anything in front of his master? Chen Haoren could imagine the foul innocence on his face as he spoke. For once, though, he had no patience for it. Perhaps you and I had more in common than I thought then, he bit out. Song Yue Lin went still. Then around him went still with him. How so? His words broke the frozen air. Chen Haoren had to watch his words. Drop the topic, anything. He didn't. We both give up too much for loyalty. Song Yue Lin's shadowy form seemed to fold and fluctuate in front of him. At any moment, Chen Haoren expected one of those shadowy hands to stretch out and wrap around his neck. Or perhaps he'd commanded the night himself to consume him. The shadow man stepped forward, and Song Yue Lin appeared out of the shadow. Do you regret it? Song Yue Lin asked. The question had the air of a confession about it. Chen Haoren couldn't help but laugh. Would he like the essay or the abridged version? There were a lot of things he regretted, both right now and back then. It was far more than just survival that he took a dead man's name. It was for more than a survival that he took a dead man's name.
Yeah, I do. He smiled. When has that stopped guys like us, though? Song Yue Lin was stone-faced. I don't like the way I've been acting, Chen Haoren admitted. Just been swept up into the flow. It was a depressingly common issue with him, one that followed him from Earth. The last of the screaming stopped. Chen Haoren could hear the crackling of burning wood. For better or worse, he had made his choice. He sighed. Did he die just to be the same man twice? End chapter 37. It occurs to me that in terms of mysteries unsolved, we don't know much about Chen Haoren's past life. Usually in stories like these, they would at least mention their previous name or what their occupation was. This is a rather more interesting way of showing that, though. It does leave us with a feeling like we've been squeezing stones to get blood, though. I hope this becomes clearer as the story goes, and that it doesn't take another 37 chapters to hear anything meaningful about his background on Earth. Chapter 38. This young master does what he should. They didn't speak when Lan Fen returned from the medicine garden, and after that night he hadn't seen her since. She moved back to her room in the manor and kept her distance. With her sensing, it was child's play to avoid him, not that he went to search her out. He stuck to his office, poring through the young master's atrociously small library. Song Yue Lin took it upon himself to keep tabs on Lan Fen, following her out on various assaults on Lan family properties. Medicine gardens, caravans, ranches, mines. Lan Fen was relentless, and with so many eyes already on them, the Lan Fen family couldn't hide the news. They were forced to finally open their doors to various delegations sent by other families. That didn't stop Lan Fen's assaults, though. Soon enough, the Lan family would have to respond, and once they tried and failed to stop Lan Fen, their enemies would rise to carve out their slices of flesh.
You seem down, young Master Chen.
He didn't look up from his book. Tell me something I don't know.
Your wife has to be being called your wife.
Song Yuelin picked at his ear, bored.
In fact, I don't recall her ever seeing her refer to you as husband without me forcing her.
He didn't need Song Yuelin to tell him that. He wasn't blind to why the man always needled her about the marriage. The idea of it genuinely rankled her. It was obvious whenever she had to act as his wife in the way her fingers wrapped like knives around his neck. Lan Fen hated the marriage, and one didn't have to be a genius to know why. He closed his book. I said tell me something I don't know.
Just making sure, he shrugged. I must say your relationship confuses me. What I see and what I've heard are so at odds that I'm left putting together a puzzle with all the wrong pieces.
Was this the moment? Oh, was this the moment then? Song Yue Lin was perfectly suited to spotting something amiss with Chen Haoren. His actions on that night might have been the last clues Song Yue Lin needed. Honestly, it had surprised Chen Haoren that it took this long for him to say anything. Was he waiting for this moment? Lan Fen wasn't too far away now. He had no way out. Chen Haoren closed his eyes. And what do you think?
That it was amusing to annoy the both of you. I'd appreciate if you could fix your issues so I can continue doing that.
That wasn't what he had been expecting. Chen Haoren opened his eyes. Are you concerned?
No, just bored. Drama is only interesting when I cause it.
Crazy bastard, Chen Haoren sighed. I never know what to expect from you. Song Yue Lin smiled.
I would consider myself lacking if you could.
Yet another mystery to be added to the assassin's motives. Nothing about the man or the Chen family had been clear-cut ever since he got involved with them. Perhaps he should be grateful, though. If they were direct, it might mean he'd get a knife in the back sooner rather than later.
Do not fear, young Master Chen,
Song Yue Lin proudly patted his chest.
I have extensive training in resolving marital. Wow, I can't say that word. I have extensive training in resolving marital conflicts.
I'm not trying to kill Lan Fen.
My word, young Master Chen, who do you take me for?
An assassin, though he wisely held that thought to himself. I have a full
I have a foolproof plan, I'll have you know, Song Yuelin pouted. Clear Spring City is actually the best place to resolve marital issues. Everything gets washed away in the waters of its crystal pools.
He whipped out 2 tickets.
I've made reservations at the best bathhouse in the city.
Put those away, Chen Haoman snorted.
But young Master Chen,
I already have an idea of how you can help. He drummed his fingers against the desk.
yes?
I'm going to need paper and ink. A lot of it. 6 hours had passed, and Chen Haoran's desk had become cluttered with letters once again, this time of a more personal nature. He had organized them into stacks as best he could, but he was running out of space. It was time to start sending some out. Song Yue Lin? The man shushed him and hooked a thumb toward the door. Chen Haoran glanced toward it, and when he looked back, Song Yue Lin had disappeared, taking the finished letters with him. Take the treasury key too, he said to the heir.
I did.
The heir replied. Chen Haoran patted his robes. So he did. There was a knock at the door. He didn't bother stretching his sense out. He knew who it was. Come in. Lan Fen entered his office. She wore a green peony-printed dress. Her long white hair was loose. Golden eyes regarded him calmly. For a moment he was struck by how young she was. Song Yue Lin had given him the numbers. At least 100 people dead. She was only 18. It was both terrifying and humbling. May I sit? She asked. Of course. She primly took a seat. Her face was neutral and unreadable to his eyes. Not that he'd ever had a good measure of her to begin with. Just another of her many talents. Or was it because he never bothered to look at her properly? He straightened into a more proper posture. How can I help you? I would like to set a proper schedule to train you in the canyon carving sword, now that I have time, she said. At least until I am sure you can reach harmonization. Is that all? Yes, came the perfunctory answer. Did you really come to see me just for training? I still owe you a debt, Lan Fen stated. I do not keep debts. Okay then, he sighed. Just let me finish here and we can hash it out. Lan Fen's eyes roamed over his desk. What are you writing? Chen Haoran looked down at the letter he had been working on. Do you remember when you looked into the crimes I had committed? He dashed out the last few lines before neatly stamping his seal on the letter. Song Yue Lin had somehow already placed his own when he wasn't looking. I'm writing apologies to my victims and sending compensation. It was something long overdue. Lan Fen frowned. Why? The unspoken half was clear. You did not commit those crimes. Song Yue Lin must be listening in on this conversation. I have the power to help them. So he did. It was something he could have done sooner, but didn't. He had excuses, they didn't matter. This was something he chose not to do earlier. He hadn't lied when he told Song Yue Lin he didn't like how he'd been acting. Here, he gave the letter to Lan Fen. Lan Fen frowned and read it. She shot up when she saw the contents. What is this, Chen Haoran? What I should have done a long time ago. You're one of my victims, too. I, Chen Haoran, swearing upon both family and heaven, declare that I have not consummated the marriage with my wife, Lan Fen. That was the gist of it, at least. It was couched in much longer legalese and flowery language, but the effect was the same. He couldn't just give her divorce papers, not in this world, but this way they could break the marriage with her honor intact. I've stamped my personal seal, and Song Yue Lin will serve as a witness. If we need it, though, I can have Manager Lin direct back to this place's seal, too. Lan Fen gripped the paper tightly. I can annul the marriage with this, she whispered. She looked up. Why would you give this to me? He frowned. I'm not a monster. I was never going to force you to stay married to me, even if it was in his best interests that she did.
I should have spoken to you about this sooner when I saw how uncomfortable you were. He bowed his head. I'm sorry. No, it's not. She hesitated. You don't need to say anything, Lan Fen. Letting it go at this point was because of my selfishness. It wasn't just the rewards of the gifting power were too tempting for him. He had grown too comfortable with Lan Fen. Lan Fen looked uncertain. Her expression was a far cry from the cool, collected confidence he had always seen in her. What had she thought of him that his action was enough to blindside her? Chen Haoren didn't want to know the answer. He watched Lan Fen steel herself. I am sorry. He blinked. For what? He asked, confused. This was a marriage meant to destroy me, she quietly said. Although it turned out to be for the better, that does not change its tainted origins. When I am called wife, I can only hear mockery and pity behind it. The word was meant to be the final title I ever had, my ignominious end. Lan Fen, I do not hate you, she said, but I cannot forget what was done. I refuse to forget it. She reached out to touch his face. Her fingers stopped just short of doing so. I cannot forget your past. She retracted her hand. He had heard hints of it before, of his predecessor's desire for Lan Fen. With how he behaved, there was no way Lan Fen hadn't been aware of it as well. No way that the young master didn't make it known to her. Lan Fen had told him that she knew of the young master to help him play his role. She never told him how she knew. Thank you, Lan Fen said, backing down. For this, for everything. You're welcome. He didn't know what else to say. End chapter 38. Bear marriages are fairly short-lived, though they don't go without consummation. Though usually after consummation is when they end, on account of the infanticide. I can't be sure those cubs are mine. What if there's some other bears? No, they have to go. They have to go, and she has to take my cubs. Or at least that's how bears do it. It's not very nice by human standards. I understand if that's surprising. Shall I continue then? Interlude, the Valkyrie 2. She made her way through the silent halls of the Chen Manor and reached the large entrance doors. Will this be the last one? Chen Haoren called out to her. He was waiting in the shadows of a corner by the dark doors. His presence was not an unwelcome surprise. He had asked to see her off, and she had agreed. Yes, Lan Fen replied. After tonight, I will be focusing on preparing for the palace exams. What if you meet a Liquid Meridian realm? She could hear the worry in his voice. It was a valid concern. The Lan family would have to make a strong showing if they wished to regain their face. It would be obvious that a Liquid Meridian realm would be dispatched to obliterate whoever had been pillaging their industries. Obvious on the outside, at least. Do not worry, she smiled. I would be elated if they sent a Liquid Meridian. Chen Haoren hummed in acceptance. He left the corner he placed himself in and walked past her. Song Yue Lin, he called. Let's go for a drink. The hall was silent. Lan Fen had to admire how casually Chen Haoren called out the name of the stronger cultivator. It was flagrant disrespect, and yet Song Yue Lin allowed it. Nothing about the man fit with her impressions of how a dignified higher realm comported themselves. He's over there, the white tyrant drawled, pointing to the very same corner Chen Haoren had vacated.
Can this bastard hurry up? Being a sneaky fuck is only so funny for so long.
She supposed that made two poor examples now. She carefully did not turn to look at the corner. Her patience was rewarded when Sung Yue Lin had finally emerged from the shadows.
Drinking so late at night isn't very healthy, young Master Chen.
We never finished our drink from the drunken immortal pavilion,
said Chen Haoren, looking over his shoulder.
You still owe me your travel stories.
He left the entrance without saying another word. Song Yue Lin sighed and followed him.
Safe hunting, Lady Fen.
The man smiled at her as he passed. Chen Haoren did her a favor in tying up Song Yue Lin. While he could not hide from the eyes of the white tyrant, Lan Fen was still forced to act carefully lest he noticed something. For all that he professed loyalty as a servant, Chen Haoren's paranoia was not unfounded.
Can we go now? The white tyrant groaned. It was bad enough watching your little lover spat. At least show me some blood.
Lan Fen sighed. It would be a long night. The Lan family had a storied history, tracing their roots to the powerful cultivators of the Shattered Era. The Lan family of Clear Spring City lacked this ancient greatness, the only holdover being their signature features. Despite this, the foundation they had created for themselves in Clear Spring City was nothing to scoff at. With the variety of industries and resources they possessed, Lan Fen's actions had not caused any real damage to the family's vitality so far. Her current target was a medicine garden located in one of the numerous valleys within the Clear Springs Mountains. A scattering of small workers' huts was situated at the opposite end of the valley entrance. Various small creeks fed chi-infused water into the valley, filling pools that had been converted into paddies for growing golden glass rice. The plant was a nourishing herb in its own right, and consuming enough of it would aid a cultivator in digesting the energies of other pills and supplements. This garden alone provided for the Land family's liquid meridian realms and upper elite.
20 ants.
The two ninth layer ants on opposite ends of
Two ninth layer ants on opposite ends of the valley. The rest are sixth to eighth layer.
the white tyrant groaned.
Another boring night.
This particular garden, while valuable, would never host two ninth layers at the same time. They were prepared for her, it seemed. She carefully noted the location of every guard as the white tyrant pointed them out.
And the workers?
She asked.
Oh, come on. Don't tell me you're taking after that moron now.
I need to know their locations,
she coldly retorted. The white tyrant snorted in disdain.
There aren't any workers, just guards.
Observers?
That shadow bastard isn't here. The moron is useful for that much at least, but the ninth layers have spread their scents across the entire valley.
Lan Fen considered her options. With the white tyrant's aid, she could hide her chi, but she lacked techniques to hide her physical presence. She had no way to slay a guard without being discovered. Then again, Song Yue Lin was not here. She could afford a more direct approach. Tyrant's progress. Her legs flashed with white lightning, and she burst through the valley entrance. The startled cries of the guards quickly roused the rest to action. The ninth layer guarding this end of the valley had quick reflexes and sent a scythe of vicious wind at her. With a lightning-quick speed, she avoided the attack and slashed her sword through the necks of the two guards unfortunate enough to be in her way. Through her sense, she could feel the guards at the valley's end rush over, while the ones she had moved past moved to block her escape. She would not make it easy for them. She skipped over the paddies and came down like a torrent on a nearby guard, carving through his armor like cloth. He went down in a spurt of blood, and Lan Fen quickly leapt after the weaker sixth and seventh layers before they had time to regroup. Unfortunately, she was only able to kill two more before the other ninth layer cultivator roared and bull rushed her with glowing green palms. White lightning flashed at her legs, and she deftly avoided the blow and landed in the valley's center. The guards finally had their wits about them and encircled her. The two ninth layers flanked her. She recognized one as family, the other lacked the characteristic Lan look.
Your arrogance will be your undoing, rat,
growled the Lan family cultivator.
I will rip that mask off your face and mount your head on the gates of the Lan estate. There is no need to be rude, she called out. If you wanted to see my face, all you had to do was ask.
She removed her mask and shook off her black hood to let her hair flow free.
Hello, Uncle. What?
Her uncle's eyes grew wide. How could it be you? He was a large man, muscular and heavily scarred. His long white hair flowed freely down his back. She remembered those scars. The stories they held had fascinated her when she first began her training.
Have you missed me?
She teased. You were crippled, he whispered, his voice hoarse.
I recovered.
Realization dawned on him.
These attacks were all you're doing,
He purpled with rage.
you little bitch! You dare betray the family!
He startled back when Lan Fan appeared before him with lightning quick flash of her movement technique.
Who betrayed who?
She coldly said. Without letting him respond, she slapped a hand against his chest and dragged him into the silver ring.
Sir!
Cried the other ninth layer. He flinched when Lan Fan looked at him but gritted his teeth.
Attack! She's only a fifth layer,
he ordered. Lan Fan jumped back and the startled guards behind her broke ranks and allowed her through. With encirclement failing, the ninth layer barked a harsh command and they instead arrayed themselves in front of her and sought to press her in. She smiled. Heaven-splitting claw. The unfortunate ninth layer had enough time to realize his mistake before he and the rest of the guards were rent apart by vicious claws of metal aspected chi. Water scattered as long furrows raked themselves across the patties, disturbing careful soil work and destroying precious spirit herbs.
And that is why I tolerate you,
the white tyrant said. Lan Fan ignored the ghost and checked her chi. A fair chunk had been consumed by the multiple heaven ring techniques she had used. She flexed her fingers. It would be enough to deal with her uncle. With a thought, she summoned him from the silver ring. He appeared in front of her, and she slammed her fist into his gut. The blow sent him flying into a ruined patty. He sputtered and flailed in the muddy water as she approached.
You really did find a treasure in those ruins, he said, rising from the water. That little girl wasn't making up nonsense.
Make sure you pay your respects to my father, dear uncle.
Have you forgotten who trained you? He growled. You're 40 years too early if you want to face me.
His arms glowed glowing green, with scattered petal palm, and he leapt at her with a rain of skill-shattering blows. When she had been a young girl, she had been envious of those who had the privilege of practicing the technique. Her uncle screamed in pain. Lan Fan's sword pierced through his palm. She slammed her fist down on his collarbone in a brutal hammer blow and heard a sickening crack. Her uncle collapsed like a puppet with cut strings.
40 years is not enough to make you my equal.
She raised her foot. Her uncle looked up at her with wide eyes, manic with fear.
Lan Fan, wait!
She cycled chi to her leg and smashed her foot into his skull, caving in his face and cutting off his begging.
Finally, some good fucking combat,
the white tyrant said, sounding exasperated.
For an ant,
he added as an afterthought. Lan Fan sighed. End interlude. The Valkyrie 2. I don't know if I have an uncle. How would I meet my uncle? Maybe I have met my uncle and I just didn't like him. I guess I'll never really know. Chapter 39. This young master gets a kickback. When he had first met Lan Fan, she wasn't a valid connection for the gifting power. It was only after they had gotten married that she became a valid target. It was clear that their marriage was the deciding factor, but it didn't explain why Manager Lin was a valid connection as well. Chen Haoren was reasonably sure that he wasn't married to the man. His current working theory was that his connection targets had to have some kind of official relationship with him. Lan Fan was his wife. Manager Lin was his right-hand man and his direct servant. The other servants in the manor, while they did serve him, were far enough removed relationship-wise that they didn't count as a valid connection. If his guess was right, then if he and Lan Fan weren't married anymore, that would break their connection and open up his slot for a new one. or it could break it permanently. He was 50-50 on that. Chen Howren had to admit he was walking in blind when it came to the gifting power. That didn't mean he regretted his decision. How it would play out in the end remained to be seen, though. While he had given Lan Fen the annulment papers, nothing came out of it. He was still connected to her through the gifting power, and if she had gone at all to get the marriage annulled, then Song Yue Lin would be the first to tell him about it. For whatever reason, Lan Fen was holding on to it, and he didn't quite know how to feel about that. On the one hand, it would be easier to break their connection as soon as possible so he could find someone who was easier to give things to. That was the most efficient use of his power currently. On the other hand, it felt wrong. What would happen? What would it look like if he showered Lan Fen with gifts and then immediately pivoted to a new person? It was honestly a bit scummy. He supposed it didn't matter in the end. Scummy or not, he would still do it when the time came. For now, he just had to focus on gifting Lan Fen whatever he could till the day she decided to leave. Not that Lan Fen made it easy for him. "What is this?" Chen Howren asked. The "this" in question being a large pile of elixirs, supplements, and herbs that Lan Fen had stacked in front of him. He and Song Yue Lin had been training together when she came and dropped ridiculous irony in his lap. "The spoils of my hunt," Lan Fen said. "I have taken what I needed. These are for you." "But I didn't help at all during your raids. I don't deserve this." "That is simply what I owe you." Song Yue Lin poked around the pile of materials and tapped a few large sacks. "Is this golden rice?" Song Yue Lin poked around the pile of materials and tapped a few large sacks.
"Is this golden glass rice?"
"What's that?" Chen Howren asked.
"It's a spiritual plant that nourishes the body. Long-term consumption can aid a cultivator with absorbing elixirs and other supplements."
"This helps you bypass bottlenecks?"
Lan Fen nodded.
"It helps loosen those caused by supplement overconsumption, yes." "Sounds precious," he said. "In the Land family, only the liquid meridian realms are allowed to regularly eat it." She smiled. "At least before I destroyed their only supply of it."
"Just don't eat too much at once,"
Song Yue Lin interjected.
"The energy of golden glass rice is heavier compared to typical qi, which puts more pressure on your meridians."
That put a plug in his plans to quickly break through, then.
"Regardless,"
Lan Fen said,
"you will accept this. I will not accept any refusal."
"Fine," he sighed. He was due for a serious cultivation session anyway. For the first time ever, Chen Howren found himself using the isolated training room. He sat on a floor cushion before a small table in the otherwise barren room. The table was set with various pills and elixirs. Before him he had a porcelain bowl, and to his side sat a bamboo container of steaming golden glass rice. He popped a pill into his mouth and cycled the Yellow Dragon River refinement. The Yellow Dragon danced through his meridians. I'm sorry, one moment. Charlie, what are you doing? Is your eye okay? Sorry, Charlie has something wrong with his eye. I expect the Rangers to come and pick him up any time. The Yellow Dragon danced through his meridians and absorbed the medicinal energies. It had grown since the first day he started cultivating, stretching from the bottom of his foot to mid-thigh in length. Its appetite grew with it and devoured all the chi that dared to flow before it. Chen Howren downed more elixirs to feed the dragon and felt his chi grow with every complete loop it made around his body. The yellow dragon abruptly slowed down, its vigorous dancing charging to a labor its vigorous dancing charged into a laborious struggle forward as it seemed to swim through molasses. The energies of the various cultivation supplements had become too much for his low-grade spirit root to process, and resulted in a clumpy chi that slowly flowed through his meridians. Even the dragon's gluttonous maw struggled to chew through it. Time for lunch, then. He lifted the lid off the bamboo containers and filled his bowl full of yellow, crystal-like rice grains. He carefully spooned some into his mouth, where it immediately melted into golden energy and flowed into his stomach before spreading in all directions through his body. Chen Haoren hummed in appreciation. He didn't even need to use sauce to eat this. He devoured the rest of the bowl and watched the golden energy gently trace his meridians and merge with the clumpy chi. The yellow dragon's halted pace immediately picked up as the blockage became looser. Chen Haoren eyed the rest of the rice. Song Yue Lin had said that it was to be consumed daily or else the meridians would be pressured. His meridians were stronger than average, though, thanks to the 10,000-year-old Stygian lotus. He pulled out the other bags of rice from his storage bag, along with a large pot and fire starters. He couldn't wait forever to slowly raise his cultivation, not if he ever wanted to stand on his own 2 feet. What followed was constant eating. Chen Haoren devoured the rest of the golden glass rice, and the yellow dragon broke free of the chi blockage. While he had the next batch of rice cooking, he wolfed down cultivation supplements, and whenever the dragon slowed, he vigorously exercised his chi by practicing his harmonization until the rice was ready. Eat, cultivate, eat, train, eat. In the silence of the isolation room, he lost himself in the process. When his stomach churned, he ate anyway. When his bloated meridians strained, he practiced anyway. When his tired muscles screamed in protest, he trained anyway. All the while, the yellow dragon feasted and grew. With the golden glass rice breaking up the bonds of locked chi, the dragon powered through where before it would have been stuck and absorbed the once difficult energies. After he finished the last of the supplements, it seemed to be enough, and the dragon flashed and raced to his head, followed by a deluge of yellow chi. Reaching the top of his skull, Chen Haoren thought it might soar out of his head. Instead, it roared. Chen Haoren awoke from his meditative food coma, the dragon's roar singing in his head. Where the dragon turned away, his chi did not. As if spurred on by the roar, it rose and shattered the invisible shackles that bonded it. The seventh layer. Chen Haoren traced the chi flowing through his meridians. At his silent command, the chi became a river and flowed down through his arms and into his sword. Here, the river threatened to overflow the dam of control he had erected around it. Chen Haoren held firm over the violent water and swung his sword. He saw blue. For a brief moment, he thought he had failed. Instead of the blue light of the active canyon carving sword, though, it was a great blue river. It stretched endlessly into the distance. On either side of him rose towering walls of stone so tall that the sky itself could only be seen along the path the river created. Chen Haoren became the canyon carving river. His chi spilled the banks and rushed out of control. The illusion shattered, and he became a man once again. Chen Haoren ignored the force of the wild chi and turned to Lan Fan and Song Yue Lin in wonder. "Did you see that? I did it!" It had only been for a brief moment, but he had harmonized with the canyon carving sword. Lan Fan and Song Yue Lin politely clapped. He frowned. "I'm not seeing much enthusiasm here, people."
"Oh, my apologies,"
Young Song Yue Lin said. He walked up and rifled his hand through Chen Haoren's hair.
"Did you learn how to harmonize?" he cooed. "Good boy. Who's a good boy? You are."
"Motherfucker!" Chen Haoren slapped the offending limb away and struck Song Yue Lin with the flat of his blade. The bastard pirouetted around the blow and hid behind Lan Fan.
"Would you like a treat?"
he mockingly called from behind his protective wall.
"I am happy for your success," Lan Fan said, ignoring the bastard, "but I will withhold my congratulations for when you can properly use harmonization in combat."
"You're not wrong," Chen Haoren sighed.
"That being said," Lan Fan continued, "congratulations on advancing to the seventh layer."
"Thank you," he said.
"I couldn't have done it without the cultivation resources you gave me." "I didn't expect you to do it so quickly, though."
Lan Fan raised an eyebrow.
"Nor to eat all the golden glass rice."
Chen Haoren smiled and said nothing. It had been a bit touch and go, but the endurance the Stygian lotus provided him proved its worth yet again. Behind Lan Fan, Song Yue Lin waved the bathhouse tickets in the air. He would not fall to his temptations.
"Would you like something in return?" Chen Haoren asked her.
Song Yue Lin, that damnable bastard, looked at him with a beaming smile.
I do, she said.
Oh? Was it another gifting opportunity within reach? Lan Fen smiled.
Would you care to join me on a walk around the city?
End chapter 39. Hmm. I've seen a lot of canyons and a lot of rivers. That's all. Chapter 40. This young master does some shopping. It was an awkward carriage ride to Clear Spring City's market district. Lan Fen's request had caught Chen Haoren off guard. It was just too unexpected after all. Not only that she wanted to publicly go out and about in the city, but that she wanted to be seen with him. So, he trailed off. Lan Fen, head propped up on her hand, turned from the carriage window and looked at him.
Yes?
Is there a reason you wanted to go for a walk? He was hoping it wasn't another euphemism. Her hunting was devastating enough. He wasn't sure he wanted to see what her walking could do.
The palace exams are soon.
That wasn't really an answer to his question, but he could roll with it.
They start at the end of the week, correct? Correct.
She nodded.
Lan Yao must participate in them.
Chen Haoren frowned in thought.
Would the family let her? There's too much attention on her right now.
There
There are benefits to it. If she participates, then she is guaranteed to pass and join the palace school. Once she does, the Lan family will have an opportunity to breathe. Because they'd have a future government official in their family? Because the palace school does not brook any interference with their students. The other families would have to be more cautious in their approach lest they offend the school, or worse. Which is what you don't want,
Chen Haoren said, leaning back into his seat.
It sounds like her joining is good. Why do you make it sound like she won't? The Empire stations its officials far from the area of their birth so as to combat corruption. Were Lan Yao to join, then it would be decades before the Lan family would see her again, let alone make use of her.
Lan Fen smiled bitterly.
And a cultivator family guards their young talents jealously.
She turned to look out the window.
Even to their detriment.
Thankfully for Chen Haoren, they finally reached the market. He opened the door and jumped out of the awkward carriage. Lan Fen stood at the door of the carriage and didn't move.
Is something wrong? He asked. She held out her hand. You are meant to assist the lady when disembarking the carriage.
Etiquette, right? He sighed. He would have to make some time to study the finer points of upper-class manners. His predecessor's poor reputation shielded him from any faux pas he committed in ignorance, but if he wanted to put his best foot forward in the future, then he had to learn it. He offered Lan Fen his hand, and she took it and stepped off the carriage. Not that she needed his help to begin with. This was just her reminding him of details he had to pay attention to.
Have you come to this market before?
Lan Fen asked him as they entered a square littered with stalls, wagons being used as stalls, and simple carpets spread over the ground pretending to be stalls.
Only when I had to dump money at the bars around here. I wasn't in the mood for sightseeing. I hope you see something that catches your eye, then.
He hoped so, too. The markets of Clear Spring City were just as varied as the tourists who came to bathe in its waters. According to Lan Fen, many merchants traveled here with their wares as a sort of working vacation, selling their products to cover their expenses while visiting the various bathhouses. They wandered through the square and dipped in and out of connecting side streets lined with more permanent storefronts. Every so often, Lan Fen would point out a specific person or group and name them where they hailed from. Chen Haoren recognized some of the styles from the last time he entered the city with Song Yue Lin. Elegant folk with wide-sleeved robes in several different shades of white perused the stalls much like they were doing with casual grace. They were people of means that had traveled from the central provinces. The wide sleeves were a fashion popular with citizens of the imperial capital, and through its cultural dominance the style spread to the regions closest to it. A troop of hardy men and women rushed past them. Their bone ornaments and sun-tanned skin marked them as being from the southern region. a vast secretive jungle filled with towering skeletons of fallen megabeasts. The natives wore those bones to indicate their prowess, with higher status determined by the quality of the monster the bones belonged to. A merchant with 3 bees lined in a row along his collar called to them from his stall. The motif of 3 was some kind of cultural holdover of ancient tribal allegiances. Chen Howren perused his wares, some interesting knickknacks and fine pottery from the central region, and moved on. "Let's go over there," he said, pointing to a shop with a stylized jewel on its signboard. There were 2 first-layer guards standing at the entrance. Whatever they were selling had to at least be expensive. Upon entering the store, they were immediately greeted by the shopkeeper, a 3rd-layer Chi realm. Glass display cases lined the walls of the store filled with jewelry and other accessories wrought from precious metals and gems. "See anything you like?" he asked Lan Fen. She shook her head. "I do not typically wear jewelry." Chen Howren figured as much. Lan Fen struck him as the type to prefer steel over silk and silver. He picked up a silver hairpin and tested its point. "You could probably kill someone with this," he said, presenting it to Lan Fen. "What do you think, Shockpeep?" The shopkeeper nervously laughed.
Of course, dear customer, our shop only uses the finest materials.
"See," Chen Howren said to Lan Fen.
Quality assurance. Plus, they're not in a bad way to store value. You could keep them and sell them for cash later in an emergency.
"Do as you please," Lan Fen sighed. Chen Howren smiled. He'd been waiting a long time for this. He pointed at one end of the display case and dragged his finger to the opposite end.
"Pick up everything from here to here," he ordered the shopkeeper. "You can have it sent to the Chen Manor."
He could practically see the tails jingling in the merchant's eyes.
"Right away, honored guest."
He rushed to carry out the purchase with a notable skip in his step.
"Is this really necessary?"
Lan Fen asked.
You should know by now that this is how I do things."
He paused.
"Plus, I always wanted to do that,"
He admitted. The happy shopkeeper came back, noticeably more servile than before.
"If the honored guest is interested, this humble merchant has a mortal rank artifact in stock as well."
"Let's see it, then." The shopkeeper led them over to a counter and rushed to the back of the store. He returned carrying a black lacquer case. Lifting up the cover, he revealed a set of golden earrings sitting on a plush velvet cushion. 2 orange and black striped gems were set into the earrings. They looked almost like eyes.
"Tiger's eyes," he subconsciously murmured. "You have keen eyes, sir," the merchant said. "These hidden tiger earrings are made from spiritual tiger eye crystals. They allow the wearer to give off a ferocious presence similar to a hunting tiger."
He looked at Lan Fen. She nodded, confirming that they were indeed a proper artifact and not some fake.
"How does a merchant come across a mortal rank artifact?"
she idly asked the man. Chen Howren ignored the merchant's long-winded story of how he acquired them and looked at Lan Fen's ears. He looked back to the earrings.
"Would you wear them if I got these for you?"
he asked her. Lan Fen looked down at the earrings.
"Do you want me to wear them?"
"I think they'd look good on you."
"I shall wear them then."
"I'll take them," he told the merchant, dropping a bag of gold taels on the counter. He picked up the earrings and handed them over to Lan Fen. The merchant rushed over with a mirror to help her put them on. Received hundredfold, profound rank, crouching tiger earrings. Lan Fen channeled chi into the artifact, and he felt a goose flesh prickle over his skin as the feeling of being stared down from all directions came over him. He was right. It was a good look for her. The sun dipped from midday into the evening when they decided they'd had enough of the market district. He didn't find anything else worth gifting to Lan Fen besides a few wild spiritual herbs gathered from the Clear Springs Mountains. This wasn't so bad, he said. He got a profound rank treasure and had more rewards to look forward to once they got delivered. It's been pretty quiet, though. Despite so openly walking around, he hadn't seen anyone making a big deal out of seeing Lan Fen.
"It is a market, after all,"
Lan Fen said.
"Many people come and go here. There are better places to reveal myself."
"Then what did we come here for?"
"To enjoy ourselves before getting to business,"
Lan Fen blithely replied.
"What did you think this was?"
"I didn't think you knew how to relax, much less do it this way." Lan Fen huffed a laugh.
Even I have days where I wish to unwind. There won't be other opportunities until the Land family is defeated.
What's the plan then?
Lanfen smiled. It was one that was all too recognizable to him now.
Shall we go eat?
End chapter 40. Wow, my voice feels quite ragged. I hope all that you're all doing well. There'll be no raid tonight, though I'll comment that barring the Rangers coming in taking Charlie, I should be on track for a 1 or 12 p.m. PST start time for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We will be doing Immortality starts with Generosity again tomorrow, and then Stray Cat Strut for Wednesday and Thursday. I've been trying to figure out something to do on Fridays, but I haven't come up with anything yet. I hope you all have a very pleasant day. Good night. Oh, suggestions. I love suggestions. What would you like to suggest? Sure, I'll see you in DMs later at high.